Welcome to the Insight Meditation community of Charlottesville, Virginia. You can find all of our program offerings and information about our Sangha at www.imeditation.org. We meet weekly on Tuesday evenings at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, currently on the Zoom platform for meditation and a Dharma talk given by one of our teachers. We also meet daily at noon Eastern Time on Zoom for sitting practice. We hope you can join us.
Oh, so many different things have brought me to this topic tonight. The mystical traditions of all of the great spiritual tradition tell us that the surface appearance of things, while it's functional and useful in its own way, is not the end of the story. There is beautiful guidance just everywhere for a personal spiritual practice that allows us to remember, to touch into, and to happily live into the truth of the deep inseparability and the fundamentally loving and basic goodness of every single aspect of our being, including every single aspect of all being. It's what the mantra is about, and it's what Pat has been teaching us these last couple of weeks. Natural awareness, just natural awareness. Your home of peace and beauty and love, our home. So I thought we'd take another look at it tonight. Our home. Here's a quote. Oops, wait a minute. Here's a quote from John McCransky. He says, "The fundamental nature of mind," this is so much what Pat has been teaching us, "is our fundamental innate awareness. This pure awareness is the ground of all experience, all our thoughts, all our feelings and perceptions. As such, it is naturally all-inclusive and wide open. Our dualistic thinking process tends to limit our attention to a very narrow sense of self that seems to stand completely apart from others. Yet our fundamental pure awareness, even as it gives rise to such dualistic thoughts, is a vast expanse of knowing that transcends all such limitations, unfettered by concepts." Ooh. All-inclusive, wide open. Only love is real. Division and form are fabrications of our minds, illusions. We are one. It is the heart of our practice. We each have a sense of this, or we wouldn't be here together in this room. It's sort of like E.T. longing for home, longing for home. We each have a sense of this, or we wouldn't be here. And yet, even as we resonate deeply with that, even as we have repeated glimpses, most of us are not yet fully realized in that way. we get confused. We wonder, how do we navigate in our daily lives? When we get into painful struggles with our partners or our communities or our children, when we receive that email from our friend who's pissed off at us or in deep distress, or we read about the Sines versus Kessler trials, or the chaos in city government, or the state of elections or national political discourse, when we ourselves or when others speak or act unskillfully, how does that work? How does that work? How do we rest in that open field of awareness and live in this clumsy world of form? Each of us, certainly me included, can struggle daily in large ways and small ways to have the capacity to be with the storms of life without being overwhelmed with anger, with anxiety, with confusion, with doubt, with losing our ground or our integrity or our commitment to the precepts of wise speech and wise action. Oh goodness, we're also very human. We struggle each in our own ways with maintaining compassion and love for all beings everywhere, for all beings, including ourselves, without exception, ever without exception. How do we act? How do we set boundaries? How do we say no? How do we make limits? How do we practice wise speech? How do we practice wise action? Does it mean we sort of just fall over and let everything be? Or, how do we do this? It's really difficult to be truly and fully human in this world of form. And that's really what the Buddha saw on his heroic journey to enlightenment. There is suffering. It's tough. Sometimes we try to deal with the difficulties by avoiding things. We avoid the challenges. We think, well, maybe that convent wasn't so bad after all, or maybe some nice monastery. We become overwhelmed, or we shut down, or we spend our lives playing computer games, or we act unskillfully in blame or criticism of others, or in blame or criticism of ourselves. I, or you, or he, or she, or they are just bad, or at least bad at it, just not somehow worthy. How do we do this? So one possibility, we just withdraw. We push away, we separate ourselves even further from aspects of ourselves or from one another. Another possibility is what's called spiritual bypassing. We've talked about that a bit in the last few weeks. Prematurely living in this world of natural great awakening, imagining that we can or should be more realized than we actually are. Maybe if I just meditate all day, or if I chant all day, I can kind of just be somehow serene and above it all. Sometimes we kind of imagine that we are, or we bump into other people who imagine that they are. Spiritual bypassing. So I thought to do a talk on equanimity, and it's sort of similar in many ways to, Pat's exploring loving kindness with us, and as with the practice of any of the Brahma Viharas, we can imagine that equanimity, like loving kindness, like compassion, like sympathetic joy, they're things to somehow get or accomplish or acquire or be or fix ourselves so that we're like that in some kind of static, I've got this sort of way. And we can forget that it's really not like that for us in this human form. It's all really a path, a practice of ever deepening, more like this spiral, ever deepening understanding and realization. Realization, understanding it more and more subtly, more and more deeply, more and more clearly, so that over time there is equanimity, more and more, more and more. There's kindness, more and more, more and more. There's compassion, more and more, more and more. There's sympathetic joy, more and more. It's not a thing that we somehow get in this world of form. It's more the sea in which we swim. So equanimity is a practice of learning to think bigger and learning to open our hearts and our minds, as Sharon Salzberg calls, as wide as the world. Opening our hearts and our minds as wide as the world, beyond our usual ways of trying to make things work out and get what we like and avoid or rejecting what we don't like. Ever cultivating, ever cultivating, ever cultivating our capacities to see the world, ourselves, just sort of in a way, a metaphor, in a way like the astronauts were able to see the Earth. They sort of get this, heart as wide as the world, or maybe as wide as the universe, and be able to see the Earth, this little blue marble, beautiful blue marble, and be able to see it from a perspective where it's like it's all somehow okay. Equanimity is what Pema Chodron calls a warrior, W-A-R-R-I-O-R, warrior mind that doesn't narrow reality into for or against, into becoming embedded in our liking or disliking. So the title of my talk comes from a Chinese proverb, and I want to read to you the proverb, and then we'll talk about it. We'll unpack it a little bit. And it goes something like this. You've heard it before, I'm sure. A farmer and his son had a beloved stallion who helped the family earn a living, worked on the farm. One day the horse ran away and the neighbors exclaimed, "Your horse ran away, what terrible luck." And the farmer replied, "Maybe so, maybe not. We'll see." A few days later, the horse returned home, leading a few wild mares back to the farm as well. The neighbors again shouted out, "Your horse has returned and brought several horses with him. What great luck. What a great thing." And the farmer replied, "Maybe so, maybe not. We'll see." Later that week, the farmer's son was trying to break one of the mares, and she threw him to the ground, breaking his leg. And the villagers cried, "Your son broke his leg. What terrible luck." The farmer replied, "Maybe so, maybe not. We'll see." A few weeks later, soldiers from the National Army marched through town, recruiting all the able-bodied young men for the army. The farmer's son wasn't conscripted because he was still recovering from his injury. His neighbors shouted, "Your boy is spared. What tremendous luck." To which the farmer replied, "Maybe so, maybe not. We'll see." In our daily human lives, most of us don't have to have our horses run away. We're gifted with mirrors. Our struggles in human form, especially in human relationship, show us where our practice is. Start where you are, Pema Chodron reminds us. She doesn't mean start with your identity as a person, but rather start with knowing your own immediate moment by moment experience. This is where to practice. In your actual life today, where is it, I would ask you, a little or a lot, challenging to remain present with a heart as wide as the world, open in the farmer's kind of equanimity, both with things that seem to be, gifts and wonderful, and also things that are difficult, pleasant or unpleasant, gain and loss, praise and blame, fame and disregard, what seems fortunate, what seems unfortunate. How to be with, for example, painful struggles with our partners or our committees or our children. When we receive that email from a friend, whatever it says, or we contemplate the holidays with a family member whose views on COVID are different. Or we read about the Signs versus Kessler trial, or maybe, spend time as a witness to it, or the chaos in our city government, or the outcomes of our recent elections, or hearings about Supreme Court nominees, or the state of national political discourse, or when we ourselves or others speak or act unskillfully. So I wanted to ask you to contemplate for a moment, just yourself, what, where is it a little difficult for you, or maybe a lot difficult for you, to be with the, a heart as wide as the world with this, whatever this is. And I'm going to ask you if you would text just me. Don't text everybody. You can go to your text box and you can find my name and just text me. If you would be willing to share where does it get, where is it alive for you personally today to be with maybe so, maybe not. And just send them, and I'm going to read them. I won't, of course, identify you. I'll read some of them to everybody so that we can share, but I didn't want you to have to like expose, if you will, your own personal struggles, even though we all have them. We can really touch into these incredibly beautiful practices and feel kind of discouraged because we kind of don't feel like I'm kind of up to it, Okay. So someone writes, in my relationship with my husband, maybe so, maybe not. What else? else. Feeling stalled in my career. Oh, that's not right. Maybe so, maybe not. I had the experience after the election. Oh, maybe so, maybe not. My relationship with my daughter. When I feel abandoned or criticized by friends or family. Maybe so, maybe not. My father struggling with early dementia. He seems happier than ever. Maybe so, maybe not. Lack of personal achievement right now. Distress at the changes in climate and environment. Maybe so, maybe not. Unskillful, impulsive speech when I'm anxious. Boy, I did that the other day. I really messed. I stepped into a mud puddle. Maybe so, maybe not. When I feel unseen or unheard or not valued. Oh, that's terrible. Maybe so, maybe not. Staying compassionate. I don't feel so compassionate with a dear friend who's self-involved with her illness and thinks she's suffering. Her suffering is so special. I'm really not compassionate enough. Maybe so, maybe not. So we could go on. We could go on. So I'd like to invite each of you to consider a very particular place where, where there's a tendency to say, now that isn't okay, or that is so okay that that it's going to be like this forever. I mean, it's so wonderful. So just someplace where you struggle a little bit with this quality of a heart as wide as the world, allowing this to be here with some kind of clarity, like, okay, how do I be with this? How do I be with this? And so I wanted to speak to, and here's where your piece of paper will come in. I wanted to speak to some ways of practicing with these that are that are the Dharma, that are our teachings, that maybe might help us navigate holding this incredible paradox, this paradox of touching into, in fact, we touch into a heart as wide as the world, and then we turn around and we bump into, I bumped into a friend whose COVID views are very, very different from mine, and with whom I'm supposed to be engaged in a project together. And it's like, okay, how does my heart as wide as the world, how does my heart as wide as the world navigate this? I don't know quite what to do. I don't know quite what to do. So I wanted to go through some possibilities as ways of practice. And what I would invite you is, as I speak of them, maybe just jot down something that is interesting to you as a possible way of practicing with that thing, that, whatever it is that you thought of, or that you wrote. A possible way of practicing. Oh, I could actually explore it by way of this kind of practice or that kind, but don't do all of them. Just kind of see what resonates for you. And so the first kind of invitation is just to contemplate as I list them and see what kind of a practice is calling to you in this situation. What kind of an equanimity practice? And the first practice that I would invite you to consider is just curiosity. Just the fact that, like, I with my COVID friend, just to kind of land with curiosity, like, oh, there must be some way, right? It can help us avoid that automatic pilot of judging our experiences, or better yet, judging ourselves or others as either good or bad. Curiosity enables us to approach uncertainty in our everyday life with a positive attitude. Buddha says somehow this works. I'm in an abusive relationship. A heart as wide as the world. How does, what, how does this work? Curiosity. Practicing curiosity. Second possibility, permission for trying things, and errors. It is said that there are 84,000 ways, for example, to meditate. I don't think 84,000 is literally true, but maybe it is. I don't know. What do I know? But it said that there are 84,000 ways to meditate. That would be 79,999 ways that a particular practice may not quite work for you, even though it's the perfect one for the person in that little square next to you on the screen. So spaciousness around mistakes while we explore things, we try something out and we see how it works. And then we see if it works or not, if it's useful, if it's skillful. Is this leading to the end of suffering? That our practice isn't meant to be like one size fits all, just do this and you will be enlightened. It is just not how it works. 84,000 ways. In this particular circumstance, there are 79,999 that won't work very well. Can we allow ourselves to experiment? And can we allow ourselves to make mistakes? And this one is also closely related, allowing or cultivating ease even with confusion and discomfort, our own and others. Sometimes when we tell the truth, other people are really uncomfortable. Sometimes we just don't know what to do. But sometimes when we speak and somebody's uncomfortable, we get uneasy and confused ourselves. There are difficult there are difficult patterns that need revision in difficult conversations that are wholesome. My own or others' discomfort is not necessarily the same as the affliction that the Buddha spoke of. We can ask wise friends, not to air our ruminations, let me tell you about how awful this is, but to explore our own experience of discomfort and stuckness, allowing confusion and discomfort. I think there, you think about somebody who has, let's say, an addiction or something like that, and how hard it can be to find, what's true about this for me? What am I willing to do? What am I not willing to do? And can I hold that with some clarity and a heart as wide as the world for myself and for all beings who suffer? Sometimes a wise friend, sometimes a therapist. I am really lucky. I just spent a month down at the Outer Banks, and I found a wonderful therapist down in Kitty Hawk. And so when I go down there, I meet with her. And so I just had, just these wonderful sessions with a psychotherapist down there. And it really helped me to gain some clarity on some places where I was confused. Sometimes we need our wise friends. Here's another one, letting go of outcomes. I said made some missteps recently. And as I explored my own recent misstep, I see that I was holding a view that can become my insistence that if I say what I think, or if I'm practicing my spiritual practice well, things will work out the way I want them to work. Ha, ha, ha. You know, and I see that I'm sort of not really letting go of the outcome. If we are, this view that if we're skillful, then the person, who's being abusive, or the person who's addicted, or the politician who's doing something unskillful, or the COVID person I spent an hour with discussing the other day, if I'm really skillful, then I will get what I want. My way will work. Ha, ha, ha. Which brings us to the other one, the next one, which is, can we cultivate a bit of a sense of humor about it all? This being human is quite a ride, it's really quite a ride. Another one, working with what is ours to do and what is not. Working with what is ours to do and what is not. I have a relative who decades ago moved to and became a citizen of a different country. That relative follows Virginia politics way, 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 way more closely than I do, and spends sleepless nights about Virginia. This person has never lived in Virginia. Spends sleepless nights way more often than I do, and is completely befuddled that I'm not as upset as they are about it. And the thing is, I'm wondering if my relative might have a little bit of a perspective that might include looking to see what is theirs to do and what is not. I said, I try to let go of things I have no control over. So I go back to the proverb, and you think about the farmer, it isn't that the farmer didn't do anything. We can imagine that he probably looked for his horse, the lost horse, probably looked for it. He probably didn't just go take a nap, probably looked for it. He probably opened his stable when the new ones showed up, said, here, come in, have some hay. Yay. He probably cared for his son. He probably, took him to a doctor and he had his leg stabilized, and then cared for him, brought him soup when he needed to. And all the while he had a farm to run. He had to figure out how to run the farm without his first without his horse and then without his son. So there were things to do. It's just that he let go of what was not his to do and what he knew that he had no control over. So rather than rushing into extremes of reaction about the things he couldn't change, he carried on with the things he could do something about. When I was looking for this proverb, I found it on a website called I think it's called Incendo or something like that. And the author, I couldn't figure out who the author was, but he quotes something that Stephen Covey wrote. He said he differentiates a circle of concern, what we care about, both close to home and far away, what we care about for climate change or voting rights or whatever. There's a circle of concern, but within that circle of concern is a circle of influence. What do we actually have some influence or control over? How and where do we use our energies? That sort of thing can come in handy in relationships where we care. I care that I'm treated well. I care that, someone in my family has an addiction. I care. But where exactly is my circle of influence? What do I have control over? Patience, kindness, patience, a gradual awakening. I know I said recently a quote from Stephen Levine. Somebody once asked him, "How can you be so loving? How can you be so loving?" And he replied, he said, "Because I am so familiar with my unlovingness. I practice with it," he was saying. "I'm familiar with it. I try to be kind and patient and loving with my own difficulties." So we could mistakenly imagine that equanimity is either staying completely in our comfort zone or becoming passive or a victim in the face of circumstances. This is Pema Chodron again. She says, equanimity is not the same as an ultimate harmony where everything is finally smooth. It is more a matter of being fully engaged with whatever comes to our door. We could call it being fully alive. And then there's faith. Over time, as we practice, we have more and more and more and more and more and more faith. Our practice invites attention, kind attention to our direct experience right here, right now. It's like this now. It invites presence, patience, curiosity, kindness. Sometimes the relief is slow in coming from the pain of it all. There's a poem written by an Indian mystic woman who died in 1977. It's called Timeless. And she says, now it is time to give yourself up. Surrender. Abandon all struggle, thoughts, worries, and hopes. Now it is time to be silent. Be as heavy and still as the highest mountain. Be as light and serene as the delicate flower. Now it is time to listen. Listen in pure silence, as if trying to hear the voice of the sun rising at dawn. Listen to the one who hears. Listen to the one who hears and rest in this timeless equanimity. So I would just invite you to be so kind with it all, We can take the teachings and make them into rules for ourselves. And to just kind of pick a little piece of it. What calls to you? What calls to you? And to maybe practice with that. See what you discover. There's a, yeah, see what you discover. I wish I had more time to hear your thoughts. Feel free to share them with me, just send me emails. I'll be sure to stop now since we said we would. If you want to stay and make comments, that's fine, but we'll end officially right here. So many blessings to you each. May your practice be nourishing and happy, even as you practice with this being humanness. We share it. I do too. Blessings.